So I am going to go ahead and get going. For those who might have just signed in, oh, looks like we're making jumps. We were quiet for a minute. We probably have several people transitioning phone calls this morning, but again, chat for kind of extra conversation, kudos, and then the Q&A for specific questions for our presenters. I'm gonna go and get this meeting started, and I'm gonna hand it over to Cassidy.
All right, thanks, Stephanie. Good morning or afternoon, depending where you're calling in from. Welcome to our K-12 National Virtual Tableau User Group. I think we've been doing this now for, gosh, I think the last 2 years. So we're really excited to see a lot of familiar faces, but a lot of new faces as well. So welcome if this is your first time. Why are we here? Well, honestly, the reason we all get together is for you, for our customers. And I should say, I do work at Tableau, so I am a Tableau employee, but we love connecting our users together. And especially in K-12, we know that you guys all love to share best practices, resources, talk about common data connections, common issues, things like that. So this is a really, really thriving community, fast growing community as well. So we really encourage you to lean on the other people in this group, make connections, and hopefully talk to people after this user group is over. And just to do some quick introductions. So as I said, my name is Cassidy Macias. I am the regional leader of our K-12. Actually, I lead K-12 nationally, but I also have some higher education and nonprofit sales teams under me. Been at Tableau about 6 years, and a fun fact, I was a former teacher in Austin ISD back in the day. I'll hand it over to Sarah to introduce herself.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me today. My name is Sarah Swanbeck. I am an account executive on our K-12 team here today, just providing some additional support. I work with our customers in California and Canada.
Stephanie Henry here. I'm one of the co-leads for your user group. I work at Plant Moran. I'm a manager in the business analytics consulting practice, focusing on education specifically, helping clients like yourselves leverage their data to make those decisions using great tools such as Tableau. I've been using Tableau. I think I'm going into my 10th year, super passionate about the product, and even more passionate about leading user groups such as this. So my peer, I'm going to hand it over to Thomas.
Awesome, thank you. Yes, my name is Thomas Price. I'm a senior consultant with Slalom. I work in our data and analytics practice. So we're all over the US, including countries such as Canada or England. But I previously worked for Atlanta Public Schools for about 4 or 5 years, that's where I started my Tableau journey, as well as just working with the state some. And now I work with them to work in a variety of industries, including K-12, to help organizations get started or continue their journey with Tableau. At the same time too, we have a really great slate of presenters today, so we can transition to that. Awesome. So we've done our welcome and introductions, but just to go through our agenda today, we'll be starting with Cherry Creek Schools. So we have Sarah and Christina that will be talking about their journey with Tableau at Cherry Creek. Well, then we have the Tableau academic team on here today, and they'll be talking about their data kids and data literacy jumpstart they're going through. And then we'll actually have a live dashboard development session hosted by none other than Stephanie. Super excited for that. And then we'll cap it off with just the upcoming events. We have obviously Tableau's K-12 webinar series, but Tableau Conference 2022. Hope you all are excited. I can't be there in person. I wish I could, but I know that many of y'all are possibly going to be there. So I'm looking forward to it. And then we'll just cap off closing remarks. Unless there's anything else anyone wants to bring up, we can go ahead and transition to our first presenters.
Hello all, my name is Sarah Jennings. I'm a data analyst at the Cherry Creek School District in Aurora, Colorado.
And I'm Christina Ethier. I am the manager of performance analytics for Cherry Creek School District. Okay.
All right.
Do you want to do this one, Sarah?
Sure.
Okay.
So just a little overview for what we will be discussing today. So we're going to talk about Cherry Creek School District, what our schools look like, our demographics. We will talk about the assessment reporting history that we've been through, our journey of Tableau from start to where we are now, the application and reporting ecosystem that we use, and then a couple of specific examples of kind of where our Tableau workbooks have been and where they are now, and then a case study. So explaining how we create this graduation guidelines workbook, lessons learned, and then where we are now.
Okay. So Cherry Creek School District is, it volleys back and forth between being the 4th and the 5th largest school district in Colorado. We have an enrollment of about 55,000 students. Like many districts across the nation, we've had a little bit of a decline in enrollment through the pandemic. But this is a fabulous Tableau public dashboard that another one of our analysts built that gives you, we call it our at a glance, but it gives you some background information about our district. So last year, like I said, we had declining enrollment. So we were about 54,000 students last year. Our district is pretty split. So just under half of our students are students of color. And a little over half are white students, and then it gives you the racial and ethnic breakdown. Like many public schools in Colorado, we have about a 12 to 13%, 12 to 13% of our students have been identified for special education service provision. We have a lower than other Denver metro area school districts rate for free and reduced lunch. About 30% of our students are eligible. Though I'm sure like many of your districts, that number is a little funny right now because we've been offering free meals through the pandemic. So not all families have been filling out the free and reduced price lunch applications. And then we have about 12% of our students who are English learners. Our graduation rate is 90%. We had the highest ever graduation rate last year, 90.7% in like a 10-year history since Colorado switched the calculation for graduation. And then we have some of our state assessment scores there. So, all right. Then the next piece is just going to kind of step us through our assessment reporting history. So Cherry Creek Schools is a school district that has been around for about 100 years. I can't trace our assessment and reporting history for the last 100 years, but I can sort of start back in the 70s. So back in the 1970s, Cherry Creek was generating charts and graphs by hand. And then moving into the 80s, I'm sure many of you have seen these CDs, but ACT or other assessment vendors would send us CDs. And then moving to 1999, this is kind of a big event for us, but this was the first time that Cherry Creek Schools ever stood up a data warehouse. So that was our first instance of a data warehouse. In 2002, we continue to kind of like receive charts. And in fact, this is this little graphic above is from College Board, and it is SAT reports for one of our high schools in 2002. And then in 2009, what ended up happening is Cherry Creek Schools purchased SAP Business Objects, and they built a second iteration of a data warehouse. However, by 2013 or 2012, 2013, it had become really clear that Business Objects, or BobJ as we call it in the district, was not meeting the intended purpose, right? So there were some implementation issues with how schools distributed a license or allowed access to data for teachers. And so we began in 2012 kind of sunsetting Bob J. Then we really kind of jump into the last 9 years, which has been our Tableau journey. So in the summer of 2013 into the fall of 2014, the district piloted 4 desktop licenses and a limited server license. Then in, I believe it was the fall of 2014, the district did an RFP, and they acquired, or the RFP was approved to acquire a larger instance of Tableau Server. So then in spring of 2015, we purchased Tableau Server. We have our school board resolution and we began planning for scale out. So, then in fall of 2015 through spring of 2018, we have training and implementation. We provide training to all administrators, to primary data users within each building, and then we begin to implement training for teachers. And then what happens in fall of 18 is we really begin to scale out further and have a redesign and rebrand. So we had issues with our dashboards running slow, and there were some access difficulties for end users. So we really stepped back, took a look at our data sources and our sort of data ecosystem and our dashboards as well, and began to redesign both. And in just a bit, I'll talk about the redesign of our application and data ecosystem. And then Sarah will talk a bit about the redesign of the Tableau, the corresponding Tableau dashboards. So then that kind of brings us to now. So beginning fall of 2019, I think one of the biggest things that happened is we established cross-functional data teams between our information systems department and a couple of other stakeholders in the district. And then the other really big thing that happened is we aligned some of our ETL processes. So our department had some different ETL tools than IS did, and we sort of aligned to make sure that we had consistency and that we could really collaborate. And while we don't call it necessarily like a center of excellence, you know, in many ways it follows practices that centers of excellence would follow. Okay, so here we are in 2018, and this graphic still gives me a little bit of anxiety, but this is sort of a depiction of where our application and reporting architecture was at in 2018. So, I mean, we've had a lot of applications come into the district far predating 2018. And so the architecture was one where it was really kind of like asynchronous and point to point, and there were different ETL tools in place. And so this, I don't know if you guys have ever played Yeti and My Spaghetti with your kids, but this reminds me of playing that game where I'm sort of like, okay, if I pull on one spaghetti noodle, what else is going to come undone? And so we really, at that time in 2018, took a step back. So in the next slide, this is one proposed data warehouse expansion that we examined. So we were really, at the time in 2018, we had Alteryx in our department, which is a fabulous ETL tool. But we were looking at retiring it because it was not consistent with what was being used in IS. We had a lot of transformations happening between a data mart into Tableau. And so we had kind of hoped that we would move to a practice where the transformations were happening coming into the data warehouse or reporting mart. So that's sort of what's illustrated on the bottom. And the hope was to make the red go away. And then when you fast forward to 2022, this is sort of where we've wound up, right? Where you have a source system and user interface or an application layer. We have lots of different applications in the district. We have our student information system, which is Power School. We have an ERP system for employee management, which is Oracle. We have different assessment systems and learning management platforms like FastBridge and Illuminate. School Piece is another one. Naviance is one that high school counselors use. And then we have another system for Enrich. And then we also have Salesforce in the mix as of last year. So I want to be clear, this is not a comprehensive application layer for the district, but it is exemplar of many of the applications that our school users and users would use. So where we came to was that moving from the source systems into the data warehousing or staging layer, most of the transformations or all of the transformations would happen coming into that data warehouse and staging layer and then across it. And then the final layer at the bottom, sort of the green layer, would be our analytics and reporting layer, which is where Tableau lives. And we have Microsoft SQL Server reporting system. And then we also have some good old statutory reporting to our State Department of Education that is there as well. And then, of course, on the right, we have, because we work in education and we have vendors or partners that still just send us files, that sort of gray box is representing movement of those files and those data points into our data warehouse so that then they can interface with our different applications and our reporting layer. Okay, so it's still not, I want to be fully transparent and not say that it's a perfect ecosystem, application and reporting ecosystem, but I do think we have put in place some processes and practices that have made it clearer that what you get in the analytics and reporting layer really is source of truth, right? Okay, Sarah, do you want to talk about dashboards?
Yes, ma'am. So now that we have kind of a, I don't want to say greater, but the data is coming from the data reporting warehouse and stuff. We also decided to clean up and redesign our Tableau workbooks. So majority of our workbooks now, so here's I guess an example. So the AP assessment workbooks. This was previous, and over the past couple years, we've been redesigning to try and have all of our workbooks look similar. So up at the top, we consistently have filters, and we have these icons. They're information or question icons that you can hover over. We have KPIs up at the top that call out either number of students or percentages of something. And then we've also broken out by school most of the time, especially for high schools. We have these larger KPIs. So just wanted to kind of show where we've been and what we're doing now. And this would be the AP. And then we have an access one as well. Then and now, so you can see consistency of the top with filters, same with the icons, and then these large KPIs. And when we've been redesigning these workbooks, we also collaborate with the other offices. So with this one, it was English Language Services, and with AP, it was counselors and principals as well. So we wanted to provide a case study, so kind of this graduation guidelines workbook that we've created, kind of where it started and where it is now. So kind of the process and how we got to where we are. So where it all started, we received requests from high school principals, counselors, to create this like high school intervention dashboard. And so the analytics team utilized the sprint process to determine key factors and what they would like to see. And so here's some examples of what they did. So they answered what pieces of evidence would be used, what evidence is currently missing, who would be the end users of this workbook, the stakeholders involved, other obstacles that could be popping up, and then how does your building use this data to support students and the interventions? So with all that information, there's also another piece that is, where's the data? So kind of Christina mentioned, we're getting all this data from external places. So we have community colleges, IB, work keys, all the assessments from College Board. And so it's like, how do we get all this data into our warehouse? And knowing that nightly data gets updated in Tableau, but there's this other piece in PowerSchool that data doesn't get loaded except monthly. But from PowerSchool to the data warehouse, it's nightly. So we had to communicate that piece too of like, people are constantly looking at data and wanting data to be there immediately and kind of having that open communication of when the data gets loaded. So from all the feedback, we created a graduation guidelines workbook. And I was actually going to show y'all a demo. Maybe. Oh, sorry, you guys. Hold on one second. There we go. So this is a demo, so not student data, but we wanted to provide kind of what we've created. So a little background, the Colorado Department of Education has required that students meet English and math competencies. And this is going into effect this year. So all students who graduate must show that they have met in English and in math. So from this like high school intervention workbook, we created this graduation guidelines that provides schools with the percent of students who are on track. And as we get closer, it's actual individual students and what they've met. So all of our dashboards go from kind of a larger view to a more specific view. So this very first dashboard, how many students have met graduation guidelines? So we have consistent filters up at the top. And then you can see these information icon that if you hover over, it lets you know what information is within each dashboard, as well as these guiding questions. And we've worked with our equity team to make sure that these questions are looking at all aspects of the students. And then we have these larger KPIs. So within each school, each high school, what percentage has met graduation guidelines? There's an on-track credit piece, so who's on and off track. And if you hover over, you can see the criteria for being on track. And then we have a breakdown of percent of students who have met both English and math. Some have only met English and who has not yet met English or math. Total counts of students. And then we have the breakdown of kind of all those options that a student can meet with English and math and the count of students. So if you go to the next dashboard, this breaks it out by student demographic group. So you're able to see within each student group who's on track and who is not. And if you hover over, we also provide tooltips with percentage and counts of students. And as you can see, consistency, right? Like the top part is always the same from dashboard to dashboard. And then this is probably the one that most individuals, principals, and counselors spend a lot of time on. This gets at the individual students. So I can click to see all these are action filters. So I can select who are the 15 students that have met, who have not met, which I think are usually the ones they want to check on. And then you can see within the student list if they're on track for credits, and the X means they have not met math, but they've attempted in some way. And the green check mark means they have met. And you can select an individual student and see in what way did they meet. So this student met with an industry certificate for English and math, but yet they're still not on track with credits. Or this student has not met and they've taken the ACT and the SAT. And then this last piece, we always provide like a resource dashboard on all of our workbooks. And so this one provides like the on-track credits and the criteria for it, as well as the full menu of options when it comes to meeting those competencies. And that's always consistent within our dashboards as well, as providing like a resource page, whether it's performance descriptions or cut scores, depending on if it's a state assessment or something. We also provide workbook guides for all of our workbooks. And so it provides the links. This is a second page, but initially the first page is what are all the dashboards you can view? And then it breaks it down by each dashboard, a description, filters included, and then there's always tips to let them know that they can hover or you can actually click on it and filter below. So lessons learned, Christina and I kind of went through these and, you know, what have we learned over the past few years? And so one, the work never ends. Even when you think a dashboard is complete, there's always input or changes from, like, example, statutes and guidance changes from CDE or our state Department of Education. You are continuing to improve processes that capture external data, revisions to internal processes, and that really gets more at like the data integrity and data validation and data loading. One needs to be open for the unexpected. I think for us, if we're being specific to graduation guidelines, there was a lot of changes even over this past year. So just being open and willing and knowing that things are going to change. Be as organized as possible. So usually when we create a new dashboard or even work on implementing new changes, we always have a process of meeting with stakeholders, keeping notes, creating templates, and trying to stay on top of that. Another one is having empathy for school staff as they implement new requirements for the first time. When new guidance changes come from the Department of Ed, a lot of people can get anxious. And I think just understanding that they're putting students first and seeing where they're coming from, I think is very important. And then knowing that this is impacting students' lives, like all this data helps inform principals, staff, teachers, that in the end helps with students' education. And then where we are now. So we are maintaining and editing the data warehouse that Christina kind of showed. And then we're also consistently updating Tableau, especially when we get new data over the summer for state assessments, or if people have other suggestions in changing kind of what the workbooks look like. So we have the IS documentation and communications, we have cross-functional team meetings that Christina mentioned. We have an assessment loading calendar that we update every year, reference tables with cut scores. And then we create and manage SSIS packages that help us load assessment data into the data warehouse. And then specific to Tableau, so I've mentioned we're validating when new data arrives, which is usually over the summer. We're vetting suggestions and changes to the workbook. And then one thing we have realized is that we need to implement Tableau trainings this coming fall. I think people get used to certain things, and it's just always nice to have a refresher on exactly what they can do in Tableau and what workbooks are out there. And then continuous improvement. So always working on updating workbooks that everyone can use. Christina, do you have anything else?
Oh. So no, I don't have anything to add. I think these are great, and I have been trying to answer folks' questions in the Q&A. So
Awesome. Thank you.
Acknowledge our colleagues. They're great questions.
Yeah, we can go ahead and just answer a few more questions. I think I saw a couple pop up. So this first one, I believe I saw was from Steve. So given that counselor caseloads are over 500 students, do your counselors use Tableau, Ensemble views to decide who to see and when to see them?
Sarah, do you want me to?
Yes.
Okay. So I would say, I think we have 6 comprehensive high schools in our school district, and we have probably the largest high schools in the state of Colorado. So you are correct that we have large counseling caseloads. But given that we have 6 different high schools, I would say each of the high schools use them a little bit differently. So I can think of one high school where, yes, they are like looking, and they are definitely looking kind of like, in the summer between junior and senior year, or right at the beginning of senior year, to make sure that students are getting the supports they need. And then we have other schools that do more of like a distributed model, where it's like a assistant principal or a dean or some sort of school administrator who is looking in Tableau and then supporting the counselors in doing the work that they need to do. And then the other piece that I should note that we didn't really talk about because it's super new is we did do some, we did embed a link to Tableau within our student information system, because the counselors do spend more time in the student information system than they do in Tableau. And so it's really, it's a little thing, but it's making the accessibility a little bit more visible and easier. Does that, Steve, do you have follow-up questions, or does that kind of?
Yeah, we can, if he does, we can.
Sorry.
Yeah, no worries. And then this one I saw in chat. So this is from Joanna. How do you allow principals to see the results for other schools in the dashboards for comparison, you could say, but then also be able to see their own student level data when they're drilling down?
So I can kind of touch on it, and then let me know if I don't answer it all the way. So we have like a user directory that allows for certain permissions. So especially the main dashboard that shows all schools, everyone has access to that. So principals can actually see percent met at other schools. But then as you drill down to the student level, they're only able to see the students within their assigned school. So as a principal, I would only be able to see students within my elementary school. As a teacher, I would only be able to see my students that are rostered to my class. Yeah.
And then how that actually happens is behind the scenes. We have, we do security in Tableau through group permissions. So that's one layer. But then the layer that we also have that allows folks to see other schools, but doesn't allow them to see the student level data for a school that is not their own, is we have within our warehouse, we have a security table set up, and it says, okay, Sarah Jennings is the principal at Cherry Creek High School. She can see the kids at Cherry Creek High School. Yeah. Christina is the principal at Smoky Hill. She can see the kids at Smoky Hill High School. So there's sort of two layers of security that we have in play.
Awesome. This next one's from David's. So it is, what will your Tableau trainings in the fall look like or consist of?
So I think it depends on who we're training. Usually our fall presentations look at state assessment data. So we will meet with PLC groups, certain teachers within each school to help interpret their data. I think more specifically, we'd like to train on graduation guidelines to really help utilize and show them how to best utilize Tableau when it comes to actually looking at their student lists. But it would be a lot of demonstrating, answering questions, providing those workbook guides, and just kind of reiterating like the possibilities that you can do in Tableau, like the hovering, the clicking for filtering and stuff.
Got it. And then we have this one from Judy. Do you have a structure on how regularly your staff are supposed to look at these dashboards for planning purposes?
So it depends on the dashboard.
Yeah.
So this year, because this was the first year that graduation guidelines was sort of fully implemented in the state of Colorado, I know that the executive director of high schools had established like a weekly and monthly cadence with high schools for looking at graduation guidelines. However, to be fully transparent, we have other dashboards like our state assessments that, you know, there isn't really a protocol around. Teachers, principals, school staff look at those dashboards when that data comes in over the summertime, but then it just, you know, you look at the user stats and you get a big bump in August and kind of tapers off into September. And then sometimes they'll go back to it later on, but that's really, you know, kind of a point in time dashboard, so to speak.
Gotcha. Yeah, that makes sense. And we saw that up at Atlanta Public Schools. Everyone's hitting it for about 2 weeks and then it tapers off.
Totally.
Awesome. This one, I think this might have been discussed in chat a little bit, but we'll just say it out loud. Did you have an SFTP connection directly to College Board for Tableau Server?
I wish.
No. Yes. If only. Yeah. So we pull data monthly for College Board, ACT, work keys, all that stuff's pulled monthly. So
shameless plug, if anybody has successfully set up SFTP or APIs with these vendors, please reach out.
Yeah.
Yeah, that person's inbox would be flooded, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Great. We have this one from, we'll take a few more questions. Do you have a dedicated engineer or do you use a service to manage change the data warehouse? So just curious about how we might start looking into that process, and thanks for all your shared knowledge.
Yeah. So do we have a data? I would not say we have a dedicated engineer. I think in the past, it's a full team. Not that it takes a full team, like not that it takes 5 FTE all the time, but it is more of a distributed process and it is much more of a collaborative process. So I would say what's really changed since 2018 is we have a pretty active hand in building what's in the warehouse and also loading things into the warehouse.
Yeah, I was going to touch on that. So the loading piece. So like I'll receive data from ACT. I'll run it through SSIS, which is kind of what we use to clean the data. and then send it over to our IS team, which really gets at that like cross-functional team collaboration. Like we meet bi-weekly with them, but we work with them to load it into the warehouse. We have a test site that we validate the data once it's loaded, and then we have production that then actually goes live into Tableau. So.
Got it. All righty. And then I think this might be our last question before we transition over to the Tableau academic team. Would you be able to share the demo dashboard that was presented today?
I think so.
Where is it published, Sarah?
It's on test right now, but it's all dummy data. So
Okay, so I don't know. We need
Yeah.
there's one other person we need, or two other people we need to check with about the feasibility of sharing. I will try to make that happen. So,
oh, real quick, Christina, what does SSIS stand for?
SQL Server Integration Services.
Thank you.
Yeah.
It's like that one I don't know.
And then Thomas, I don't want to get us over time, but Joanna had another question about applying security to some worksheets in a workbook and not to others in a workbook. And that is exactly what we're doing. And Joanna, if you reach out, we can share, I think, the formulas that we use, the calculated fields that we use within Tableau to apply that security. We're happy to share those with you. Those are not proprietary by any means.
Awesome. Well, thank you all so much, Sarah and Christina. And I think, if people do have questions, they can enter it into that Q&A box and y'all can just answer via chat. But once again, thank you so much for sharing with everyone. And I'm really excited to hand this off next to our Tableau academic team, and I'll let them introduce themselves.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us, Thomas and Stephanie and team.
Awesome. I'll just wait for Tyler to share our slides. But while he's pulling those up, I'll just introduce myself. So my name is Ari Gemza. I am on our Tableau academic programs team. I've been at Tableau for almost 3 years, and I help manage our Data Kids program and have also been working on our K-12 instructor and student audience over the last year. Tyler, do you want to introduce yourself now?
I can. Hey, everyone. So I'm Tyler Weldon, and so I'm the curriculum program manager here on the Tableau academic programs team. Just joined about a month and a half ago. And came from about 10 years of experience in different realms of higher education. So very excited to be here and work with this academic programs team and Tableau as a whole, and helping promote data literacy.
Awesome. Okay, so what is Data Kids? Data Kids is a community-led program to help spark curiosity about data in younger kiddos. So a lot of our content is actually provided by people like you in the community. And who is it for? It's for kids ages 5 to 13, parents, educators, after school programs, anyone else who may work with young learners. Girl Scouts loved one of our gardening activities, so it's kind of used all around, whether it's in that after school program setting or just at home with parents and their kids. So the resources that we offer, we have a ton of fun activities. We have tips to guide data exploration. We have our new Data Kids Educator Kit, and there's really so much more: blogs, data sources, all types of things. And none of the activities that we actually publish require Tableau. That part is always optional. The purpose is more to introduce data topics and prepare young learners for this changing learning environment that's really starting to pivot to include data skills in a bigger and more fundamental way. Just to give a overview of the Educator Kit, it's a packaged resource that includes an icebreaker, which is actually just getting the kids to play a fun game of tic-tac-toe, and then they gathered the data based on the winners and the number of X's and O's used, and then an intro to data presentation, a guided activity, and then an optional Tableau public demo. Data Kids really just serves as an open resource for data literacy, and it makes learning feel really fun. Most kids don't know that they're learning when they're doing it. They just think they're having fun, but they're actually recognizing that data is all around them every single day. So feel free to check it out with anyone you think might be interested. And Tyler's now going to talk about data literacy and education.
Awesome. Thank you, Ari. So again, I'm here to talk about our Tableau academic programs. And so in particular, our data literacy curriculum. And so again, our goal here is to provide free resources to students and teachers that help promote that data literacy gap, right? And so quickly, I want to talk about why that's important, right? So we know that the world's most valuable resource is no longer oil, right? It's going to be data. Like we know that is the most valuable resource now is data, right? Every second of every day, the world creates enough data to fill 50 new libraries of Congress. And so if you've never checked out Data Never Sleeps, or actually on Data Never Sleeps 9, this is actually from Data Never Sleeps 6. But I quickly grabbed that graphic and I will just drag it over. Actually, it's not going to drag it over, but I'll just tell you. So when I talk about creating data to fill out libraries of Congress, think about, so as I'm talking in this 1 minute, 65,000 photos on Instagram are being shared. 44 million people are viewing stuff on Facebook. 856 minutes of webinars are being recorded on Zoom as we're talking. 452,000 hours of users are streaming stuff on Netflix. And so when we talk about data, data is being consumed 24/7 every minute of the day, and it's not going away. So again, we kind of just touched on this, but the internet is feeding this data, right? So over 5 billion people are now on the internet. So with that comes the issue of separating fact from fiction, right? That's getting harder and harder, as we know, separating that fact from fiction. And it's so easy for something to throw up a data visualization and throw that out there. And sometimes it's hard to separate what is true and what is not. And so what do we kind of know about education as well, right? There's becoming more and more increase in the need for data skills, right? We have, along with traditional math being taught, there's a growing increase in the need for teaching data analytics as well, adding to that already traditional math toolbox, right? And so with that comes data literacy. And so what is data literacy, and what are these skills that we've found that needed to be taught, right? And so in today's world, we know that they need to be able to find information and sort the good from the bad, right? We just talked about that. They need to be able to understand how to interpret data tables and charts, analyze and discover hidden insights, right? Go from what they call into those exploratory type environments where they can explore the data themselves and make their own decisions. How to visualize and present data to make an argument, right? And then use common analytical software, like so Excel and Google Sheets, how to take data they collect and then analyze it. And so what do we think we need to teach our high school children to do right now, right? So we need them to understand how to ask good questions, right? How to form that hypothesis, how to consider data, right? How to understand how it's used to address real world problems in all facets of their life, right? And so as they go on and as your seniors in high school go on to college, right? How they can make those own decisions themselves. And then analyze statistical graphs and help identify patterns in data and connect those patterns back to the real world. And then also they need to know how to interpret data. They need to know how to critically evaluate the shortcomings of the data and understand the data collection process as well. And so what we can do to help these students, right? We can help them understand how to interpret that categorical and quantitative data. We need to be able to help them answer questions and help them understand the probability and the rules of probability, help them evaluate and fit models of the data. So these are things that we need to be able to help students do. And so where does this go when it comes to college and career readiness, right? So one thing we do know, right, that helping students become better with this data, they prepare them for college and the workforce and boost high stakes test scores, right? So I actually was just looking at this yesterday and was taking some of the questions myself, right? So right now, 29% of the SAT math is data and is related to data analysis. I think it's 17 out of 58 questions. And so, you know, we have seen that is an increase from 20 years ago, right? So we know that that is now becoming something that's important, right? And so how does that also help with job readiness? So employers are desperate to find people with data-related skills. So 40% of the companies right now are reporting that they have positions that lack those data and STEM-related skills. And so what are the top emerging jobs, right? Machine learning engineers, data scientists, big data developers, full stack engineers, full stack developers. And so we're seeing this increase in data skills-related jobs. So we did a quick search recently of jobs available in the United States, EMEA, which is the European area, and then APAC, which is Asian Pacific. And just by searching Tableau in the job title, you can see 46,000 jobs, not 20,000 jobs, 16,000 jobs that popped up just by having the skills of Tableau and understanding data. So the jobs are out there. And so what can we do to help with that? And so for us, we have ready-made curriculum that is free to use for all Tableau for teachers, group members. And so if you're a teacher out there that wants to teach, or you know someone that's at your district that's wants to teach data literacy, we can provide them with a free ready-made curriculums. And that's going to explore what is data literacy. There's a 1 and 2 component of that. There's also going to be a data visualization. We're working on data for good. So, you know, how do we use data in an ethical way and tell that story ethically? And so we have, I think, over 10 right now, and we can share that resources out with the follow-up resources recording. And so, we're here to help in any way we can. And this is all free resources for any teacher that wants to teach that into the classroom. And that comes with content. It's got assignments. It's got ready-made PowerPoints, and then even an LMS export as well. So if you're using an LMS, we can give you an export that will go directly into the LMS. And so that's what we have. I just wanted to again take that quick time to share that. And then if you're going to be at TC this year, please come by and stop by the community booth. I'll be there. I'll actually be speaking as well on teaching Tableau with Jim Daner, who is on this call. Actually, I saw his name in the participants. So if you want to hear more about that, please just come by and say hello, because we'll be there.
Just a reminder, if you have any questions for Tyler or Sarah, go ahead and put them into the Q&A box. I didn't see any sitting out there right now, nor in the chat. I'm going to flip through really quick and double check. All right. As a reminder, we will have this recording, and we have the ability to connect you post-meeting. I know there's some chat off to the side about some people making those connections. So if after this meeting and you get the link within a week, if you want to reach out to Tyler and Ari to talk about next steps regarding the academic team and what they have to offer, you'll have an ability to make those connections there. So, all right. I think we will go ahead and move. Oh, wait, hang on. There's a question that just popped up in the chat. Where can we see the ready-made courses. So maybe if you can just talk a little bit more in depth about that.
Yep. Ari, you want to go for that one?
Sure. So anyone who has an active Tableau for Teaching instructor license, which you can request through TFT, it's free for instructors looking to use Tableau in the classroom setting to teach. They will receive a link to access our Dropbox with curriculum, and they can pull any of the 10 plus courses that we offer. And then another thing that's included is free access to the entire e-learning suite if you also would like to ramp up a little more in Tableau.
Perfect. All right, got to think. So I think that answered the question. Perfect.
Sweet.
All right, we're going to go ahead and transition to the next portion of our meeting. And so I will actually be sharing my screen. Let me make sure I'm sharing the right screen here. All right, so for the next 15 minutes or so, I'm going to work through a workbook live, just so you can kind of see some tips and tricks that I do when trying to do some rapid development. And we'll have the ability to answer some questions before we close out the meeting with some upcoming events, webinars, and some conference information. So I'm going to level set with where we're going to start. My focus is really leveraging the duplicate, whether you're duplicating calculations or duplicating worksheets. Why reinvent the wheel, copy and paste concepts to keep you moving quickly. I have just a fake set of data, so limited with what I have, right? Because I'm not connected to a specific school. So don't worry, this is all made up data. We are looking at a list of students who are high school, and it ties very nicely with what Cherry Creek demoed this morning, as Cherry Creek minds think alike. Using using Colorado, graduation requirements is going to be the lens. So a group of students with all of their assessments as it relates to those guidelines, which Sarah and Christina nicely set up what I'm going to be talking about here. We'll be creating some, or I already have in my workbook, created some basic calculations. And I think these are probably pretty common for those of you who've already been using Tableau, the count distinct of a student ID for the basic number, and using the total default calc on that to get your total count that is used in the percent calculation, your numerator and your denominator. So those are already built out. Those are pretty tried and true for any workbook dealing with education that I ever support clients with developing. For every guideline metric, and so as the ladies talked about earlier today, there's the different assessments and within the different content areas, creating a true-false calculation for those. So if we're thinking about the AccuPlacer math test, we're going to fix it on a student ID. We're going to grab the max score that they have for AccuPlacer. And if it's greater or equal than 61, that statement alone becomes a true statement. It's a Boolean, it's a true false. So very quick for Tableau to process. And so if you repeat that for every single guideline metric for the different content areas, you can then do an or statement to say if they've met an ACT, if they've met an AP, if they've met in the capstone, that or statement again becomes a Boolean, which again is a very quick processing. And so that is kind of setting the stage with some behind the scenes. I wanted them here so that you have the calculations up on the screen that would be in the video. So what we are going to end up with within the next 15 minutes is a dashboard that looks like this. I will try to walk through step by step as much as I can in the time allotted. So we are going to go from here, and we will have, let me just jump over to this basic page. Okay, so we have our basic worksheet. I am leveraging captions to kind of do my step-by-step instructions. Again, that way you have my steps up on the screen as I'm talking through them. How I got that here, you have to have something on your page to kind of get you started. And so oftentimes I'll just create a quick variable right into a shelf. You can type it right here in your card shelf or even up here. Very basic. No time to process when doing this type of work. Once you get something on your page, you can come up here and do a show caption. Tableau begins to build out text for what you have been doing. So things on the shelf, any calculations that are being built, you can just double click that and start to overwrite. This tip is really good if you needed to pass off instructions for somebody or just to keep you honest with what your step was to get to an end product. Sometimes I use this for taking notes of, need to double check this calculation, and I'll make it bold and in red. So it always pops up on a different screen here. You can come in here, right, and change the size and change the color. You could say to your coworker, can you double check this? Any kind of note, right? And then you can always reset that back to the default calculation, which Tableau is pulling in fields and calculations, et cetera, or hide it, right? This can also be placed on your dashboards as well. Lots to share here. All right, so let's just kind of get started. What I had talked about before was just a basic Boolean calculation for each metric. So fixed on a student ID, give me the max score. And for this assessment, it has to be greater than or equal to 61. By itself, it is a true statement. And so Tableau over on the little left has that true false indicator. So we could duplicate this, edit, and then start to place in your next assessment. So again, type it in, type in the metric, rename it, hit save. So within seconds, you could come in here and craft out all of your metrics in here. So I'm using the feature by organizing by folder structure. So group by folder, it gets rid of your table or view format and lets you cluster your metrics and calculations into folders and rename them. I like to do that to keep myself organized as well. When you're handing workbooks off for others to use in the future, they know what to open and kind of dive into. So as we look at the math lens, here's all of the different assessments that are tied to the math graduation. Here's all of the actual metrics. I have that met. Here's all of those true false statements. And then I also have it for the reading, writing, communications. And then there's this other group that's just the work keys ASVAB, which is kind of trumps if they pass in work keys, that kind of overwrites the two different separate content areas. You'll notice here I have some called label. I like to use that for naming conventions on my calculations. The true false doesn't necessarily work when there's not a value assigned. So capstone is either passed or not. There's not a 31% or a score of a 67, et cetera. So I'm using that true in assigning of the word passed to it or not passed or not applicable if there wasn't anything in there. So you'll notice that. I'm going to also just highlight, as I talked about, those basic calculations, count distinct of student ID. There's the percent of student. So those are kind of the core pieces. Build once here, duplicate, replace with all of your different assessments. Okay, so that's kind of where we're starting. Let me show you one other metric calculation that's in here. For general, the kind of landing page, you want to know the percent of students who are meeting graduation guidelines. No matter how they got there, tell me that how they got there. So there is, again, a Boolean calculation. Did they meet the math and the reading, writing, or work keys, or ASVAB? So we're going to use this first. I'm going to place this is a trick here. I'm going to place this on my column shelf. I renamed my alias. So instead of it being true or null, I went in here and changed it to be the verbiage I wanted it to be, met or not meet. I'm going to then go ahead and grab those basic metrics. I'm going to place my percent onto the text marks card. If I sit too long, it thinks I want to rename it. I'm also going to grab my number, and then I'm also going to grab the total and place it on here. I also need to grab this MET graduation. I'm going to hold down my control key and also drag it. If I were to drag it, it would come off that filter shelf. Now I'm going to set up my label the way I want it to be. I'm going to keep my percent up top. I'm going to move my guideline text and do an of. I'm going to make this bold. And here up on the screen we have here, which is great. But what my goal is, I want just the Met graduation. So I'm going to come up here to the header and the column. I'm going to right click and I'm going to hide that Met. I'm also going to uncheck show header. And now I have my band, my big angry number that is for the percent of students meeting graduation. I have the numerator and the denominator in here. I am going to turn off my tooltip. I already did. I'm not providing any additional value or information. And so if we think about a person who might be using their mouse and where they kind of go crazy, those pop-ups might be distracting if I'm not providing any additional information. So you turn those off. Rename the worksheet, and then I'm going to duplicate the worksheet. So I would just do right click, duplicate. So here I am. I have that exact same copy of my Met graduation, but now I want to see the percent of students who met that reading, writing, communication one. So I'm going to come up here and in my search, I'm going to search for Met underscore. I'm going to grab my Met reading, writing, and I'm going to place it directly on top of that blue pill. I also need to show headers. I'm going to place it up here for a second, do my trick again, right? Control, drag it up here. I'm going to right click, hide that not meet because that is not what I'm wanting to show. I can then remove this off the filter shelf and now have my reading, writing, communication percent meeting. Duplicate and repeat for my math, and then also repeat for my the kind of catch-all, the ASVAB and the reading, writing. So I'm going to move through those steps again, right? We're just replacing. We're going to set things right on top. So I'm going to grab my Met Math, stick it right on top. I'm going to take it again, my Met Math, place it up on the filter shelf, right click, hide, throw that off the filter shelf in here. I'm going to rename it, duplicate it, and do it one more time for the kind of catch-all in here. Up here in my search, and I'm looking for, what did I name it in here? All right, so this one, true, false. I had, they met, they did not meet, and some just didn't have scores at all. So what I did was I made a set where I just pulled, so I forced this Boolean concept so that it was either met or everything else, which is the not meet or the nulls. So this one had a slight variation just based on the data set. So if I use that up here, I can hide my not, same concept, throw it off the filter shelf. Oops. Use that instead. Throw it off the filter shelf. All right, so now we have all 4 of our big and green numbers. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to this Met graduation catch-all, and now I'm going to make 100% bar chart using the same concept. So I started from a duplicate. I'm now going to move this percent of students. I'm going to move it up to the column shelf. So we have our bar here. I'm going to click on my Met graduation and I'm going to show hidden data because I want to grab those not meet that I had hid on the previous one. I'm going to place that over here onto the color marks card. So now we can see Met is teal, not meet is gray. And then on my tooltip, I need to adjust it. So I just did a little kind of trick. I just placed it in here for ease of show and tell. And just update anything that didn't stick. And now when we hover, we have our percent and we have our Met. I can choose to, on my label, only show one of them. So I think I'm going to keep, I moved it. Hang on just a second. Put that back. I'm going to just show my percent. And the other thing I want to do is I want to fix my axis. So I'm going to right click and edit. I'm going to fix it to 1. And I'm going to then hide it. And then I also like to come up here to the lines, and I'm going to get rid of all of that extra ink that might be used should this be printed out. I feel like kind of best practice is to keep things as clean and simple as possible. So this is kind of what I do typically when helping others develop. And let me just double check my notes here. And then I'm going to right click and duplicate. And guess what? All we're doing is placing out what sits on the color again. So if I come up here and I search for MET, and I want to grab that MET RWC, I place it on top, boom, done. Right click, replete. I'm going to come over here, grab my math, place it right on top, done. And I'm going to come over here one more time, over to my catch-all. And place that right on top, move my color legend so it sits on the bottom for consistency, and I am done. So now I've just made 8 worksheets in just a matter of minutes here. And one more piece, I'm going to come over and do a roster really quick as well. So in my student data, I don't have really any student demographics beyond a fake student ID. So that's all I have to place up here for now. So I'm going to place my student ID onto the row. I'm going to do a trick here. You saw me do it earlier. I'm just going to type in here min0 so that I start to get a measure out here. I'm going to do that. I'm going to hold down the control key. I'm going to, and I apologize. Yes, I'm going fast, but I knew this is going to be recorded. And I do have these little notes here to keep to help you kind of track this going forward. So I made some duplicates. I'm going to make sure I'm sitting on that very first pill. I'm going to grab, again, the one that we've been using consistently, the MET. And I want to grab and place that onto my shapes card. And I'm also going to control click and put it on my color as well. I'm going to come up here to my color legend. It remembered as I was already pulling this up, but I went ahead and just made my not meet graduation a very simple thin X. And then for the graduation, I wanted that heavier, bold, filled circle. It just created that different visual interest. As I scroll down, visually, right, the shapes change. And so it's a good cue. And then also using those very contrasting colors of the teal versus the light gray. So I'm going to go ahead and click on these other tabs over here. I think I had reading, writing next, if I'm not mistaken. So it would help if I had that expanded, huh? I'm going to go ahead and place that on the shapes and then drag click onto color. My fourth one is the math, place on shapes, place on color. And my last one was that kind of catch-all, place on shapes, place on color. All right, so now we have our roster. We're using those placeholders because I didn't want the metric to be, 65 or 95 or whatever that score was. I just wanted that visual cue. Let me check my notes here. I also had, let's see, updated access titles. So we could come in here, demo time. I'm not going to update all of these, but we could just update this. MET graduation. And then I could edit the access, right? I could come in here, turn off the tick because I don't want that 0 there. And then just do that same thing and title this MET RWC, MET Math, read the everything. I'm also going to update this title really quick. I like to use within the title here as that visual cue. So I'm going to use the MET and not me and have it color coded. That way I don't have to put that on the legend and take up precious real estate. And I think that was already hidden. So I think we're ready to put this on a dashboard. All right, so here we are, blank canvas. I'm going to cruise through this really quick. What I love to do, I'm a layout container girl. I have to use them all the time. I place a vertical out here every single time. I'm going to grab a title. I'm going to stick it right into the middle. And what I should have done before is grab this so I don't have to type on the fly. I'm going to, again, place that, drop it right in the middle, paste. Center, because that just might drive me crazy. I'm also going to take a horizontal layout because I want those bands to sit at the very top. I'm going to drag them underneath. Because it's in a vertical container, I can set the height. I usually drop things in at 200 and then play around. I know that I'm going to want this at 150 just because I ran through this before. What I'm also going to do is drag a blank in here. Just lessons learned from trying to navigate layout containers. Putting a blank in the middle really gets you kind of set. So when you go to place your vertical, within that horizontal, you can see where it's going to land. So I'm going to stick it over there. I'm going to double click on that vertical layout container. It's going to grab the horizontal layout container. I can right click, distribute evenly. This will come into play as we start to nicely align these out. So I'm going to, in this very first one, I'm going to grab my met band. That's my big angry number. And then I'm going to drag in my 100% underneath. I'm going to hide my titles. I am going to change this. I probably made that a little too big. I'm going to change this to 200. All right. What drives me crazy is when we start to bring these out in this color legends, we have that thing that takes up space on the side, which is usually your filters, your color legends, etc. What I like to do to make it floating and drag it off the page. You can't grab it by the handlebar, but you can grab it by the corners. And that way, as you start to add other things onto this page, it doesn't take up space. So I'm going to cruise through this really quick. I'm going to grab my big angry numbers. I'm going to grab my 100%. I'm going to hide the header. Do this 2 more times. I'm going to grab math. I'm going to grab 100%, hide. Almost there, guys. 1 more time. Grab the catch-all and hide. We had that blank that I was using to kind of placehold, so I'm going to get rid of that. And so here I could come in here and distribute evenly if I wanted to, because remember, these are layout containers. You're double clicking on the gray to get to your blue handlebar. You could also set these to a specific height if you wanted. For now, distribute evenly works just fine. There are tips and tricks out there to kind of get rid of and fake out when it highlights. I'm just going to change this to an entire view. It's just me. And it's going to drive me crazy. They're a little too big for my liking. But I'm going to go ahead and take my raster and I'm going to place that right underneath. And here we go. And so all of those color legends, remember, they used to take up space on the side, but now they're just sitting off over here. Because I had been in here before, let me just open up our actions, this sheet. I have this set to click on, if you click anywhere on select, it's going to update everything, and on removing, it's going to show. So let me go ahead and unclick here. So if I wanted to look at the 5 students who did not meet graduation benchmarks for this very small set, I could click here. And now I have a list of the students. And right, this was reading. Had I had time to update, this would be the reading, writing, communications, math, and then that ASVAB and work case kind of catch-all. I can see that, who met and who didn't. And here is a really cool thing. Don't have time to go into details, but we could also click on this student. Oh, I have to actually build it. Hang on just a second. I need to go up to dashboard actions. The sheet I'm going to, actually, I don't have time. We're running really low. Let me show you what I did on this other one here that's built. What I had built out was a student report. So we're going to come in here. We're going to focus on this student that I'm noticing has that gray X. I'm going to click on that student, and it's going to jump over to a student profile page. This profile page was built based on a parameter. And so it says, I'm clicking on the student ending in 183 on that first page. It's going to update the student parameter. So you could have used a filter as well, but this has been used in other demo purposes. I have a really quick visual up here. Did they meet, not meet, meet? And then for each section, it shows what scores they have, what they were, again, if it's below benchmark, which I have here as a reference line with the number. Visually, I see the reference line, I see color, I have dots to say, did they meet or not meet? And so and this is a portrait page. So a person could print this out, have a conversation with a student, and they have all of their max scores for each of these and have a really good pulse on that. So I'm going to stop there. I'm going to take a breath. I try to get through as much as I can in a short amount of time. I do have my questions up, and I'll just kind of go ahead. Why do you use duplicate instead of copy? So in here, I'd have to look, there is, that's a good point. There are 2 ways to do it. And in my notes somewhere, I have the pros and cons. I'm going to make a note on a sticky, and I will try to include that in the communication that goes out after, because there is a difference. And right now on the fly, I can't think of it, but that's okay. So I will answer that in our respondents to go back. So I apologize, Amy. Can you recommend any resources for Tableau newbies geared towards using in education? I think this platform is amazing. Networking with your peers, working with school districts everyone's so willing to share great information. I know that when I was learning, I would follow blogs, and every Monday morning, I would give myself time to open up, and I use Feedly to track them all, because it would go and pull all of the new blog posts that were out there, and I would read through them. So I honored my professional development and gave myself a set of time per week to read through those. I would also pin things I liked. I would try to backwards engineer things. So those are all kind of some really quick ways here. With the information in the gray area to the right show up if you were on? So good question. It does not show up on Publisher. So if the person were to download it as a creator, or if they're an explorer and doing a web authoring edit mode, right, it would open up into that new screen and it would be there. So I like to use this to capture notes, to also create a place. If I have a filter that's running a dashboard, but I'm not letting the user see it and affect it, but I need it there for transparency to remind myself or someone else using it, I will put it off to the side. And just to let you know, this, let's just grab a blank out here, floating. I'm going to maybe floating. Blank, place it out here. If I were just to grab it by the handlebar and move it, it goes away. So the trick is you have to grab it by those corners. I showed it earlier, but I wanted to show it again. You can do layout containers there as well. Yes, this is absolutely fake data. It's not very exciting. You can look at my numbers here. I should be able to provide that. All right, I think I captured that all. I apologize. I need to make sure we hit these last couple slides. So I'll read through these comments and see if I missed anything else. I need to pull up our PowerPoint. And I'm just going to pull it over. All right, so I'm going to let Sarah Swanbeck from Tableau talk about this slide.
Hi, everyone. Yeah, thank you, Stephanie. That was awesome. Definitely take a breath. I learned a lot from watching you, so I appreciate you going through that. I just wanted to briefly touch on a series that our K-12 team has been running called Tableau Tuesdays. I believe many of you have probably gotten the invite, but really the intention behind this is to have targeted webinars around specific use cases and concepts that our customers are kind of always asking about building in Tableau. So we've had 3 events thus far. We have 3 left, and we're getting ready to plan some more. So we'll make sure to include the registration link in our follow-up information, but we'd love for you guys to join or at least register so you get the recording. And then if you have topics or if you want to present, definitely reach out to us. We're kind of, we have a lot of opportunities, and they're very targeted events. So we've had a lot of really good feedback thus far. The next one that we have coming up is actually next week, and it's going to be focusing on DEI. We have 2 customers presenting kind of how they're building an equity lens in Tableau, how they've approached that data, et cetera. We're also inviting Stephanie, who we all know and love, to do just a quick demo on how to build out some specific kind of DEI calculations within Tableau. And then we're going to run through DEI visualization best practices. We have a guidebook that Tableau as an organization has put together that we're going to share with everyone. So let me know if you have any questions, but we'd love to see you guys there and appreciate all the input that this community has provided thus far.
Great, thank you, Sarah. I'm going to do a plug. Sorry, it's just up on my screen. After all of that, I didn't want to mess up the recording here. Let me just kind of ignore that part. So Tableau conference, right? We are almost a week away. It's crazy. So we have in person and virtual. So if you are going, please let me know. I will be out there and would love to network with you during, meals or after, wherever. So let me know, but there will be a lot of great content. If you are going in person, make sure that you're going out and registering for your sessions. In past years, I've noticed that you used to be able to kind of stack an hour with a couple different sessions you were interested in. This year, it's making you pick just one, which I'm kind of bummed about. But so start to build out your agenda. If you're going in person, virtual, there's a lot of great content on day 1 and then day 2 as well. There's going to be both in person and virtual. Day 3 is just in person. So there is no virtual programming on Thursday. So it looks like Sarah has provided that K-12 demo link into the chat. I want to say thank you to all of the presenters. We had a jam-packed session today, running down to the wire on here. Know that, again, this is recorded and we usually get the link within a week, and Thomas usually sends it out to the masses who registered. So we will be able to provide the link to the recording. If our presenters are able to share content, we'll ask for that as well. I also have some notes here that I saw regarding the duplicate copy, and then someone wants to know about some blogs. So I will try to include that as well. Just huge kudos to Cherry Creek. I used to work at Cherry Creek, so very near and dear to my heart, all of the great work that they're continuing to do. And then our academic team, it was great to have them on, to know we have such additional great resources within the Tableau community. So Thomas, do you have anything else you'd like to say?
No, that was a lot. That was a mouthful. But no, thanks so much to everyone again today. And thank you to all the attendees. I hope you all find tons of value out of this and continue to promote this to those that may not be familiar with the community, and continue to return to these sessions as we bring you this type of content. Hope everyone has a great rest of their week. And once again, thank you so much to all our presenters today. So far, so good.
Thanks, everyone.
I mean, that's my list.